Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? We are a couple seconds behind our normal schedule today because everybody's going crazy because Super Bowl. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done celebrating the Super Bowl. As a Giants fan, there wasn't much to celebrate. All year, much less last night. It's always been something we wanted to hold the line against. Was the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl victory. But they did manage to get it. I didn't know what to do with yesterday's game. You know, everybody's kind of tired of the Patriots winning, except, of course, Patriots fans. But even they might be a little bit tired of it. And, I'm sure they can do without for the moment. And they'll probably be back there next year anyway to win their 7th title, unfortunately. But okay. So it was a well-played game. I didn't pay that much attention to it. Again, that was like not a Super Bowl that I was going to be terribly interested in. I thought it would be okay. As a Giants fan, I'd rather, I guess, just have the Philadelphia Eagles never win a Super Bowl. And then people say, well, how can you be okay with 7 Super Bowls for the Patriots? You know, all about them and all the allegations against their team and the way they sometimes win. And I just figured, I don't love them or anything, but when the Giants are there, the Patriots are no problem in the Super Bowl. So I figured it would be okay if they won again. And, anyway, like I said in the Morning Post, which only went up a couple of minutes ago, as it turns out, it was a busy morning. Congratulations to Philadelphia. It's nice that you now have made it to 1-1 against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I feel like I have to rib somebody because the Giants were terrible and didn't even, get within viewing distance of the Super Bowl. However, they did win the Super Bowl commercials, as I understand it. Again, I didn't get to watch Super Bowl, normally a cultural event that I will participate in and watch live on television, but like I said, not terribly interested last time, more interested in hanging around and, we were cooking some good food and having a nice day. And speaking of having a nice day, today we're having an ice day here in the D.C. area. It was about the worst weather you can get all day yesterday. That is to say, raining at about 30 degrees, which is really, if it's going to be that cold and it's going to precipitate, it might as well be snow, at least give us that. But instead, it was the coldest rain possible, and no one really likes that. And the kids were pretty upset because they figured that they wouldn't have the luxury of having school canceled. And then the temperature continued to drop, and I thought, well, maybe you'll have a delayed opening because it's going to get icy overnight. And they did. They called us and woke us up at 6 in the morning, as they usually do, and said, 2-hour delay today. So then I thought, all right, well, the kids will be happy, but I will, of course, have to work around it during the radio show. So I was prepping in my mind to get that all done. And then they called again at 7 and said, it's gotten even colder. The temperature has dropped even further. We thought it would be warming up. It got colder. The icy conditions bad enough. They're really not. In certain parts of the county, anyway. One of the advantages of having a county-wide school system versus municipal school systems in our part of the country. And in the rural west, it was just a little bit too icy to make it worth getting out there early in the morning with the school buses. School's canceled. So the kids will run around in the background celebrating. It's a little bit like Philadelphia here. Fireworks going off in the background. It's actually pretty quiet. Anyway, it's not quiet on Twitter. The president got finished with his weekend getaway, having left the kids out in the cold on Friday. Same kids, by the way. He was making his way through our part of town Friday afternoon, right during high school dismissal time. So the kids were stuck on the buses in the parking lot of the school, sitting out in the cold without, the benefit of the heaters running, waiting for the presidential motorcade to pass by. Apparently, he was out in the area visiting the Immigration and Customs Service guys, the ICE offices out by Dulles Airport, which is where you would think you would put ICE offices if they're going to be out here. And, of course, because it is a full 29 miles door-to-door from the White House to the ICE offices, And because he wanted to get down to Florida, where it was nice and toasty warm, and he could collect emoluments from people, he took the helicopter, Marine One, back and forth this 29-mile trip. Although I'm told that he even took the helicopter to Walter Reed Army Hospital when he visits there. But if you were ever wondering why, for instance, Danica Roem, the Virginia state legislator, newly elected during the off-year elections here in Virginia, keeps such a laser focus on local traffic issues, that ought to tell you it is a 29-mile drive between the White House and here. And it's a drive that he makes fairly frequently because the golf course that he visits when he's in town, anyway, when he sticks around Washington, D.C., is out here too. And I don't think he takes the helicopter for that ride. But if he does, it's even worse because, of course, as I said, he had the kids frozen in place for about half an hour as all traffic in the area was blocked because the helicopter was taking off and landing from nearby Algonquian Regional Park, where they have a nice big open space for him to land. What was puzzling was seeing the motorcade go by and making that turn into Algonquian Park because, of course, there's another place right nearby. In fact, literally next door, if you actually felt like taking a look on a Google Maps or something and find Algonquian Regional Park in Northern Virginia, you will notice that literally next door is Trump National Golf Course, where I understand there's a tremendous amount of open space, and they probably could just as easily land a helicopter. But I guess I don't know whether they don't want to mess up the greens. But these are the greens that Donald Trump drives over in a golf cart. So I'm not certain what the deal was. I'm not even certain why they decided to land here. Like I said, the ICE offices are pretty close, within about 3 miles. Well, less than that. A mile, perhaps, from the outer gates of Dulles International Airport. And I'm pretty sure you can land a helicopter there. They have lots of open space. And if the president is on the helicopter, I bet they can have traffic hold for just a minute. But I don't know. I'm not sure what the logistics of landing Marine One really are. But it was quite annoying. And it's quite annoying that he's still president of the United States, allegedly. Because he's on a Twitter rampage, and we'll catch up with all of the things that he's been screaming about. Of course, it's the memo and Adam Schiff. And he's apparently run out of nicknames for people because he is a toddler's vocabulary. So it's little Adam Schiff that he's yelling about this morning. And just in case we ever get around to loosening up those libel laws so you can start suing people, Adam Schiff, I guess, could be first in line. The president tweeting this morning that he was illegally leaving closed briefings to leak classified information, based, of course, on nothing and whatever. So Mr. Loosen Up the Libel Laws would be on the hook right away for that one. Let's see. What other fun things are happening this morning? Who cares? What else could there possibly be other than the memo? We spent all weekend, I guess, alternately, depending on who you were reading, obsessing about the memo, being distracted by the memo, the shiny object of the memo, because some other subject that you're not paying enough attention to. It was a great weekend for my favorite kinds of headlines in the newspaper. That is to say, you're so dumb, you're distracted by X when you should be looking at Y, and then quickly followed by you're so dumb, you were distracted by Y, you should have been looking at Z articles. And the 5 things that you, anyway, stupid person that you are, need to know about this subject, etc., etc. It was one after the other. What a fun weekend. Okay, well, let's see. Greg is racking up the stories. Looking out here. Oh, well, he's getting excited about getting on the air, too. I see some charged up messages to me here, and we're up in the neighborhood of about 25 stories today, so we'll see what we can fit in during our first visit. Is everything, let me just double check that everything is up and running correctly. Yeah, still having the issues with the music, so I'll have to remind him when the break is coming up, although I am assured that he has one of these clock things that you can use to tell what time it is and whether everything's working, and when it's time to get on and off the air for our breaks. So we'll see how much effort it takes to get that thing working. Let's see. This morning's Twitter feed has been chock full of interesting stories. Oh, there's our pleasant little tune. So we're about ready. We can answer the phone here. All right. Still not popping up the way it used to, but nothing works the way it used to. You know, they don't make things the way they used to.
Well, you
here
get
in
to be
this
a
country.
certain age, and literally nothing works the way it used to. I mean, it's just one of those things, you know?
I've been talking to Donald Trump about that a little bit. It's been a little embarrassing, but, you know, he's getting up there in age as well. All right,
It's true.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, good morning. We're good. So
Okay.
let's see. We have the Trump tweets. Let's start with the Super Bowl and just get rid of those stories.
Oh, okay.
Okay? This is
Yes.
my favorite Super Bowl story from the Super Bowl. I don't know if you heard about this one.
I don't know.
Super Bowl anti-terrorism documents left on plane. You know
Yes,
about
I
that one?
did see that this morning. Yeah, couldn't miss that one. Transparency. It's great.
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security documents critiquing the response to a simulated anthrax attack on Super Bowl Sunday. I think there was a movie about that. Were marked for official use only and important for national security. How do we know this? Because they left it in the pocket of the plane, which was found by a CNN employee who either had the luck of sitting in that particular seat or who spends their time scarfing up and down the aisles looking to see who left what in the little pockets that, you know, sometimes you get a big surprise like one of those flight bags.
Yeah, I don't think they usually leave those full. But
Recipients of the draft after action report, well, they don't take them with you.
yeah, I mean, I guess
You got to put them somewhere.
right, and they'll charge
Recipients
you
of-
for an extra bag. You don't want that.
Yeah, recipients of the after action reports were told to keep them locked up after business hours and to shred them prior to discarding. They were admonished not to share their contents with anyone who lacked an operational need to know. That's what I like about the security with this administration. They're security experts.
Yes.
If they have something secret, they write on it, "Secret, please do not look."
Yeah, right.
And that dissuades people, you know, so that nobody would actually take a look. You know, when they hand it to their Russian lackeys, you know, they just write on it, "This is secret, don't look at this."
Yeah. How much for this? You want to pay me for this one?
So in any case, a CNN employee discovered copies of them along with other sensitive DHS material in the seatback
Excellent.
pocket of a commercial plane,
That's the place to put it.
along with the travel itinerary and the boarding pass. So you know exactly who did it.
That's pretty good. Secretary of Homeland Security, you're being promoted.
Right, exactly. So, you know, there was that. The other thing about the Super Bowl of note, despite Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl, CNN reports both that they won the Super Bowl and this story. Several players have already indicated they will not participate in the traditional White House visits, citing their opposition to President Donald Trump.
Well, I'll be darned. That sets such a terrible precedent not to visit the president just because you oppose him politically. But then again, things are different, and this is not normal. We have to actually.
This isn't going to be a story. Everybody's going to say, "Okay, so what?" You
I
know?
hope it rests
That's
there.
good. That's good.
I
It's
think,
like
although
everybody feels this way, so like, why not?
yeah, my hope is if they write about it. I mean, I guess Fox will be like, "This is an outrage" or whatever. But if people are going to pick up the story, they might as well say, "Yeah, it's people visit the White House for presidents they dislike all the time. It's just that this guy is so intensely disliked for such incredible reasons. You know, why would you visit this kid? You might as well go to a daycare center if you want to hang out with kids."
You might as well. So, of course, Donald J. Trump was on Twitter this morning. He tweeted, "The Democrats are pushing for universal health care while thousands of people are marching in the UK because their U system is going broke and not working." They're U for universal. Dems want to greatly raise taxes for really bad and non-personal medical care. No thanks. The really fascinating thing about that is that the reason people were marching in the UK is underfunding of the healthcare system that they actually like.
Oh.
And so Daniel Dale points out, leaving aside Trump's mocking of universal care, the London March was liberals and socialists marching against what they said was conservative underfunding of the British health system, not against the system itself. The system was praised by the marchers, protesters carrying placards with the words "Kick the Tories out" and "More staff, more beds, more funds," gathered in central London in large numbers in support of fixing what they say is a crisis in the NHS, in the National Health Service. "Keep your hands off our NHS," they chanted as they marched towards Downing Street. So that's what actually happened. which is, of course, not quite the way Trump understood it, but then again, he doesn't understand anything.
Yeah, maybe he didn't understand the translations.
Yeah, because from English to English. Jeremy Hunt, who's the Health Secretary, wrote, I may disagree with claims made on that march, but not one of them wants to live in a system where 28 million people have no cover. NHS may have challenges, but I'm proud to be from the country that invented universal coverage. This is in response directly to Donald Trump's tweet, where all get care no matter the size of their bank balance.
Well, all right.
And people are upset with Jeremy Hunt for writing that. They're saying, don't make me agree with you.
Oh, well.
But, there it goes. So, there's that. John McCain, by the way, and Chris Coons are introducing new immigration bill that omits wall funding.
Oh.
We'll see how that goes. The way things are playing out is that the Senate may well do something. Mitch McConnell may keep his word. It's possible.
Yeah.
And then it'll die in the House. But,
yes.
But that may be how it works out. It may get everybody off the hook.
I think that's probably what he was counting on, was the ability to say, all right, if I do have to keep my word. Yeah.
Leave me alone. Come on.
It's not up to me after this.
Not up to me. It's up to Donald Trump. U.S. borrowing to spike 84% this fiscal year to nearly $1 trillion with tax cuts slashing revenue. So I just pointed out on Twitter that the Republican Party has nothing to do with the business wing. There is no business wing in the Republican Party.
No.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, they don't actually do business
They don't care about
well.
free trade. They don't care about deficits. They don't care about balancing the budget. What they do have is a bunch of mega donors who want big tax cuts for themselves and reactionary social policy.
Yes.
But there's no business wing. So I
guess not.
Stop talking about it that way.
I'm sure the Tea Party will be out asking for horns to be honked shortly.
Horns. Yeah, the only horns the Tea Party has is trying to stick it on people and saying anti-Semitic things about them.
Oh.
And by the way,
yes.
There's this piece here, The Cult of Trump,
by
Jonathan Swan in Axios this morning. Rarely has a president changed his party as fast and profoundly as Donald J. Trump. Love him or hate him, you can no longer argue his ability to bend an entire party to his will. In the 2.5 years since he announced his candidacy, he's moved the party away from decades of orthodoxy on trade, Russia deficits, and more, saying the same thing I did, and has helped make the Law and Order Party skeptical of FBI leadership. We'll get to the memo in a minute. We are all MAGAs now, a source close to GOP leadership referencing devotees of Make America Great Again. While much of the GOP donor class is passionate about issues like criminal justice reform and expanded high-skilled immigration, many GOP voters want the exact opposite. Yes. In other words, they're still scared of their base if this is too long for you. The ratio between the number of Republicans who think that way versus the number of conservatives who talk that way is way out of whack. Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum were their lonely on-air champions. If Trump is tapped into a silent majority, it's those voters, the opposite of Paul Ryan voters. The opposite of Rubio, the opposite of Jeb. All evidence in the last 2 years points to the fact that the Republican base was never as conservative on economic policy as we portrayed them during the Obama years. That is to say, they ain't free traders. We know that.
Well, yeah, and they're not deficit hawks either.
But the interesting thing is the acknowledgement here in the article.
Oh.
The vast majority of lawmakers in Washington don't understand them, talking about the base, feel deeply uncomfortable with their social conservatism and don't understand the concerns about trade or immigration. What they do understand is they're afraid of being primaried, so they shut up and go along.
Yes.
That's me adding it, but that's basically what the article is trying to say.
Okay, I can buy that. That
means that Trump has the ability to create realities that Republicans in Washington will either silently tolerate or willingly believe and embrace. So again, it's all part of why are they letting him get away with stuff? Because they're terrified. He's terrified. He's terrified of the Russia probe, and they're terrified of the base. It's a really toxic mix, and that's basically why what's happening with Republicans in Washington is what's happening with Republicans in Washington.
Well, yes, that and a reflexive axiom.
So the other thing that Trump tweeted today, which is of note, little Adam Schiff, you mentioned on the show, who is desperate to run for higher office, is one of the biggest liars and leakers in Washington, right up there with Comey, Warner, Brennan, and Clapper. Adam Leaf's closed committee hearings to illegally leak confidential information must be stopped. You get the impression somebody's a little worried. And this is all with the background of John Brennan saying the Steele dossier didn't play any role whatsoever in the intelligence community assessment that was presented to Obama and then President-elect Trump. He said that on Meet the Press yesterday. Republican lawmakers are distancing themselves from Trump on the memo. And there were 4 people in the Intelligence Committee, Trey Gowdy, Chris Stewart, Will Hurd, and Brad Wenstrup. He's from Ohio. Hurd is from Texas. Chris Stewart's from Utah. And, of course, Gowdy's from South Carolina. And they represented the committee on the morning political talk shows on Sunday. And they all basically said this has no impact on the Russia probe. Whatever the memo says, whatever it's about, and you can argue what it's about. We thought it was about looking at FISA policy. But whatever it's about, it's got nothing to do with the Russia probe, which is the official line from Paul Ryan.
Yeah.
But what they don't do is they don't endorse Trump's view that this vindicates him. They say the memo has nothing to do with anything in regard to that. So keep that in mind. That's their line. That's a little bit of backing away from Trump as opposed to rallying around him. And, as the Times write, with a Monday vote expected, Democrats pressed to release their own memo. So now that the nothing burger of a memo is out, and it turns out it doesn't support anything that Republicans were saying, and if anything, makes the point that it was really all about Papadopoulos and there were other sources besides the Steele dossier. And by the way, Carter Page is a Russian agent. How do we know this? Because Carter Page said he was.
Yes, that's true. He does say that.
In a 2013 letter arguing with some referees of a journal, I guess he sent an article in and it wasn't getting published, so he was starting to argue with the referees.
Okay.
And he sent in a letter saying that, he has some sort of special relationship with the Kremlin, and that's one of the reasons as an expert why they should be published. And, if you're trying to make the case that I have nothing to do with the Russia stuff, that's not the way to do it. So if you have Carter Page being a Russian agent, and the whole purpose of the Nunes memo is to say you should never have been looking at Carter Page, that kind of falls apart.
Yeah, Carter Page has never really been on board with the team's excuses. He's been pretty consistent in insisting that he's very heavily tied to Russia. They just say he's got nothing to do with us.
Well, there's another point to it, and that is that Carter Page's actual arguments that he's been making for a year, that you never should have been looking at me, is what the GOP is using as their argument. So they're intimately tied with Carter Page. And by the way, Carter Page was working with Trump. Trump mentioned him by name. And so he's never really explained why he had a Russian agent working with his campaign.
No one has really asked that. Of course, the answer is he wanted to get bribes from Russia.
Yeah, pretty much. So as the Times put it this morning, as Republicans in the House Intelligence Committee backed away on Sunday from Trump's claim that a newly released memo vindicates him, Democrats pressed for the release of their own classified rebuttal, with a vote expected on Monday, that would be today, on whether to make it public. So now the Republicans are in the situation of either looking like they're stonewalling or releasing a memo and then having Trump say, no, I'm not going to release it, in which case it goes to a secret vote in the House, as I understand it, where the House could in full vote to release it anyway, something along those lines?
Yeah, according to what we read, I think, on Friday from one of the, one of the lawfare writers, I think, analyzed the process for us. I don't think they'll do it, but it will be very interesting to watch them attempt to. I don't know. I'm not even certain
if it's truly a secret vote. Maybe they would.
Maybe. I guess I don't know.
It's like breaking the Hastert rule. If it's a secret vote, then you don't know.
I guess that's possibly true. I mean, they'll have some idea of who voted. But I don't think they vote by secret ballot. It's just a closed session. So members will be able to pressure one another, certainly. But we'll see whether there's any real value to this Democratic rebuttal memo.
Well, it's 10 pages, so in Trumpian terms, 10 is bigger than 4.
That's
so
true.
It's bigger than yours, and so therefore we win. That's the only way he understands stuff.
I guess that's a good enough reason to reject the publication. It's almost like this memo was such a dud that it's almost seems like, well, it's certainly worth considering that it might be better to just leave it alone to stand.
No, because you make the case for why there's a Russia probe, and that's really nice to have out in the news.
Well, yeah, it does make it wasn't supposed to make that point. The fact that it does is great.
Yeah, and then you force people to cover it because of all the controversy. So I see every reason to put it out there and no reason to just go ahead and move on.
Oh, I'm not saying move on, but I'm wondering whether it's better to just, it's almost better to have as the issue, Republicans refuse to release the Democratic memo. I don't know how exciting it's going to be.
No, what you should do is have them refuse to release it and then release it next week.
Okay, well,
if you played it out that way, that's, what happens is the committee says yes, Trump has 5 days to review it. At the end of the fifth day, he says no, then you vote on it, then it's a 2-week thing. So it's a win-win.
That would be good. I imagine stretching it out would be fun.
Anyway, so there's that. What else do we have here? We have this story from Illinois, and again, our friend Dana Hull and others have put this in context, but it's from The Guardian. Holocaust denier to become Republican nominee for Illinois congressional seat. Art Jones, the sole GOP candidate for the 3rd Congressional District. Anti-Defamation League calls Jones a longtime neo-Nazi.
Oh, well, at least he's been at it a long time.
Right. The thing is, this is part of Chicago. It's so heavily Democratic that usually no other GOP candidate decides to run.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And he tried to do this in 2016, but was taken off the ballot because he didn't have enough qualified signatures.
Oh, okay. So he's a perennial guy.
Yeah, and typically it's like a LaRouchian, as Dana Hope pointed.
Yeah.
And the point is, it's such a heavily Democratic district, and I'm not endorsing what I'm about to tell you, but it's such a democratically held district, there is no chance for the Republican to win.
Well, we are coming up on our break, Greg.
Right, we'll finish it off before the break. Since they can't win, they can't recruit. Since they can't recruit, they get the nut jobs to run. That's what happened. It's as simple as that.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kgrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And as they say in the entertainment business, we'll fix it all in post. Those of you who missed because of our commercial break, Greg Dworkin's amazing blue streak on the way into the break, we'll put it in the podcast. It was fantastic. You very rarely hear him break out in profanities like that. But, these things happen, and when Nazis run for office, it's very upsetting. But not this particular Nazi, because I guess he's a perennial loser there in Illinois, but it's a bad time to have Nazis on the ballot, really, to be honest.
Not just Illinois. Apparently he's a loser in Wisconsin, too.
Oh,
the story goes on to say, for more than 40 years, Jones has attempted to win elected office in Wisconsin and Illinois. In 1976, he received 4,765 votes in the Milwaukee mayoral election, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported, and then goes on to say his Nazi costume, his celebrations of Hitler's birthday, his protest against the local Holocaust museum, his presence at neo-Nazi and white supremacist events have long been documented. The Anti-Defamation League calls him a long-time neo-Nazi. So he tried to run in the 3rd District in 1998. And on Sunday, a spokesman for the Illinois Republican Party did not immediately respond to a request for comment. But the state party, the chairman, issued a statement to the Sun-Times in which he said, "We strongly oppose his racist views in his candidacy for any public office. The Illinois Republican Party and our country have no place for Nazis. We don't like Nazis. We bite Nazis. We really dislike Nazis." But the point in fairness that I was trying to make is that although this guy is a whack job, The problem is that if you can't get sacrificial candidates,
Yes.
you're going to lose, but just run so this guy doesn't win. Do it for the party, take a hit, and then we'll find some better place for you to run next time. You often will have people who do that, and for some reason they haven't been able to find that this time. Part of the environment, I think, that like Republicans just don't want to run.
Yeah. Of course, yeah, and I guess now it could be that people are saying, well, I was thinking about running, but this guy is such an original Nazi hipster. I don't know if I could stand up to this guy. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
going
to
to beat me, and how embarrassing would that be?
I'm some Johnny-come-lately Nazi. I'm not going to stand for that. I want, the people are going to want the original.
Yeah, I suppose. So there's this piece for the background of how Democrats are doing.
Nazi-come-lately.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just it's not a good situation. We have our crazy people on the Democratic side who might run in a heavily Republican district if you can't recruit people. We have had problems with recruiting everybody in every district. So that's the part I want to say about in terms of being fair. But the other part of being fair is to acknowledge the guy's a Nazi. And by the way, he's going to be the nominee for the Republican Party. What are they going to do about it?
Well, maybe invite him to the White House.
Maybe. And appoint him to a commission.
Yes.
So the New York Times says they can't wait to vote. Energized Democrats target dominant GOP in state houses. And this is from Newtown, Pennsylvania. They must be latecomers to that name since our Newtown is 350 years old. So
okay.
For Republicans in the states, the political warning signs keep mounting. In Virginia, it was an electrical shellacking that nearly snapped the 20-year grip in the state house.
Okay. Yes.
In Wisconsin, it was a midwinter rout in a special election for state senate fought in a conservative district. And in Pennsylvania, it's been an exodus of state legislators in the Philadelphia area. More than half a dozen Republicans have opted for retirement over a strenuous campaign.
And Philadelphia is in the news, I understand.
Yeah. Something happened, and I think they won, or like Rocky music was playing spontaneously out of all the apartment windows. I don't know. Something.
Yeah, that could be true. Too many television channels playing the Invincible movie, too, yesterday.
So, and Will Smith had a wonderful little video pre-game.
Oh.
Just, prepping the Eagles. It was really wonderful.
Okay.
We can't play that on the air because, it's a radio
something.
show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're not even probably supposed to say Super Bowl, for God's sake.
Yeah. No, I'm going to sue you. So Republicans will not be easily dislodged. In many states, Republican governors have built powerful machinery to defend their allies, like not allowing elections and voter suppression and things like that. And Mr. Trump remains popular enough across much of the Midwest and South to limit Democratic gains. In 31 out of 50 states, Republicans command the entire legislature. In 25 of those states, the governor is also Republican. But with some momentum behind Democrats, at least for now, the party appears positioned to make inroads in crucial legislatures, winning a new measure of relevance in state policy and perhaps limiting Republicans' influence on congressional redistricting after 2020, which is really what this is all about.
Yes, that's a very important subplot to all this, which was supposed to be the major plot, but we'll take any help we can get in, and maybe it's even best that it remain a subplot and people not pay that much attention to it on the other side. Well,
Democrats pay attention, Republicans forget it. Don't even
Yep,
listen to the show.
That's my advice.
Here's one from the Washington Post. Early gauge of 2018 turnout shows good signs for Democrats. They're just about as likely as Republicans to say they plan to vote in this year's congressional elections, which, by the way, is a break from the two previous midterms in which Republicans were significantly more inclined to vote. So yes. Democrats remain about the same as they always were, but Republicans have declined in terms of saying that they would vote.
Oh, see, we need even more.
Just over half of Democratic-leaning registered voters, 51%, say it's more important to vote this year than in previous elections, compared with 34% of Republican-leaning voters who say the same.
Okay.
So that's actually quite useful.
Yeah.
The other thing is the post-ABC poll found the Democrats holding a 12-point advantage over Republicans when registered voters are asked which party's candidate they will support. So it's a 12-point generic ballot. We've been talking about that.
Yeah.
8 or more tends to be Democratic wins. It had been averaging about 12. Now it's averaging closer to 7. If you take all the polls, but that includes some Republican-friendly polls. You can't cherry pick. You can't take them out, so you got to throw them all in. This is a 12-point lead for the Democrats, which is a pretty good number. But what's interesting about it is the breakdown from the poll shows that Democrats hold a 37-point advantage among voters in congressional districts classified as solid Democrats.
Oh, okay.
And in solid Republican districts, Republicans hold a 9-point advantage.
That is less than the 34.
A lot. And so if you're looking at it as a enthusiasm gauge, it actually, yeah, go find it.
Enthusiasm. There we are. Okay. I got it. You can't hear it, but it takes all the wind out of my sails.
That's all right, as long as you have it. Anyway, it shows that the Democrats are more excited for the Democrats, Republicans less so for the Republicans. And the race is tight in competitive districts with the Democrats having a 2-point lead. And it's interesting. Kyle Kondik, who analyzes this stuff at Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball, says, let me put the ABC generic ballot in context. I'm not saying it's an accurate reflection of reality, because the overall poll is D plus 14 in one place. But the piece, that's the ABC version of it. But in the piece they point out, the Democrats are leading 64-26 in D districts, and R's are up 51-45 in R districts.
Oh, that's not a lot, 51-45.
Right? Trump won the 241 R-Hill districts by 21 points. And Clinton won the D districts by 34 points. So the poll shows the Democrats running an eye-popping 15 points ahead of Clinton in the Republican districts, while just a few more modest 4 points ahead of Clinton in the D-Hill districts. So it's the Republican districts that the Democrats have made inroads in. In other words, Kondik says, I think the ABC write-up downplays what an incredibly strong finding the poll has for the Democrats. And again, I'm not saying this is reality, just providing some context. Many of the other generics are significantly closer. We're just talking about the averages. And one can see the Democratic disadvantage in the House based on gerrymandering and other non-gerrymandering factors. That is to say, Democrats live in cities, and so you only get as many districts as cities can give you, and everybody else gets the others, and there's more of them. So the fact that Hillary Clinton won the 194D districts by 34 points on average, and Trump won the 241R districts by 21 on average, district-level voting shows that's how gerrymandering works. In other words, you split it up so that you get more districts to vote for your people, but in doing so, you actually water down those districts a little bit to achieve that effect, and that means in a wave election, gerrymandering actually could make you very vulnerable.
Yes.
Because you don't have as many solid R districts. You just have created more of them that are R leaning so that you can win a little bit more.
Yeah. Then
the wave comes and it overcomes the fact that you built a district that is only a little bit R leaning because you wanted more of them.
Right.
So this is just another way of looking at the fact that they could really lose the House. And in fact, G. Elliott Morris, who is a political scientist who tracks this, a little conservative leaning,
G. Elliott,
puts the odds at 2-1 that the Democrats will take the House.
Oh, all right.
Based on polling right now.
Well, let's get out there and vote right now.
Right.
If only if the election were held today.
Well, I'd love the presidential election to be held today, because then Trump wouldn't be there anymore. But that's just not how it works.
No, we may have to wait.
Right.
I don't know if he'll make it to the next election, though.
Right. Now, here's an interesting story following healthcare and looking at stuff. The CDC is having issues, of course, with their director stepping down.
Yes.
But here's another one that doesn't get as much attention, and this comes from the health journalism people. There's an association of health journalists.
Oh.
And they sent this article around that Modern Healthcare, which is an outlet that reports on health issues. CMS has threatened to bar Modern Healthcare from participating in federal agencies' telephone news conferences because they wrote something that CMS doesn't like.
Oh, that's sort of out of bounds, typically. Okay.
Typically it is. Their website is down at the moment, so I can't give you the link, but I'll give you the tweet on this. And it's really kind of interesting that such a thing would happen because it's the Trump administration, and they just figure they can get away with everything because you're too distracted by Trump's tweets.
Well, yeah, or something. We're always distracted by something.
So
Modern healthcare. What's CMS?
That's the old HFCA.
Oh, okay. HICFA. Yeah, got a new name. All right.
Center for Medicaid Services.
Yeah, all right. Wow, so there was something they didn't like, and so they're barred from. Well, are they barring them only from teleconferences, or is that just all they hold?
It's not clear. They were on the phone, and they actually cut them off and said you can no longer participate.
How fun. Okay, well.
And so other healthcare journalists are not real happy with that.
Yeah. Did any of them hang up? We don't know.
I don't know. So here's what I have this on the Pundit Roundup, so even though the website itself is not loading, at least I have the story.
Yes, okay.
And what it says is Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that's what CMS is, threatened to ban a reporter from participating in the federal agency's telephone news conferences after he refused to delete 3 sentences from a published story that apparently had rankled CMS Administrator Seema Verma. The reporter, Joel Dixon, Washington Bureau Chief for Modern Healthcare, believed the agency was making good on its threat when he said his phone went mute during a CMS press call and a woman's voice told him he was not allowed to participate. An editor later confirmed with CMS officials he's been banned from press calls.
That's pretty remarkable.
They don't have press conferences. I mean, not everybody in Washington has press conferences. Those are expensive and difficult to arrange.
Yeah.
So they often have, press calls where you're allowed to call in and they talk, and then you're in a queue, and then you get to ask questions. I participated in some of those.
Sure, yeah, I've been on those.
And you wait your turn, and then, if they like your question or if they think you're legitimate and you're allowed to be there. Sometimes you're on listen only, and you're not allowed to ask questions. But they wouldn't even do that. They just, cut them off and said, you can't even listen.
Well, yeah, they're really, I don't know, they're a bunch of autocrats, and a lot of them think that's the way it should be, and because they have either no government experience or they wish they were, part of a governing Nazi coalition.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to leave a little bit early, give myself a chance to get to work because it is a little icy out, so we're going to drive slowly.
Okay.
But Jared Yates Sexton tweets this: "It's astounding that the story is the Nunes memo didn't work." And that is the story as a political maneuver. And not that Republicans are willing to destroy the FBI and betray the country, which really ought to be the story.
Yes, but one of those weird stories that people have difficulty writing in the traditional press, like the vice president supports politically motivated torture. I don't know if I want to print that.
It's funny because, somebody responded to me on Twitter as we were talking about some of these issues and said, it's interesting, this person said. I have friends who are very Republican and conservative, and they basically tell me this Russia stuff, it's just so difficult to believe that any of this stuff is true. They added, because if it is, it's really bad.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that feeling. I had it at the beginning.
I thought it was a really well expressed, feeling, because there's a lot of people that just don't want to know.
This can't be.
They can't be, and they're unwilling to believe it because the implications of it being true are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a James Bond movie, a spy novel,
probably not true.
Kind of dumb stuff. The president is just they just outright bribed the president to be pro-Russian and anti-American.
And he's working to cover it up. He's actually upset. Nah, it can't be.
Let's ordinarily, right? And ordinarily, I'd be with you on that. But what if you throw this curveball? Dumbest and most venal person ever to be president.
Well, you got to do your narrator voice. The narrator says,
yes.
Unfortunately, it was true.
Yes, I have to figure out what is extremely narrator voice as I see it written on Twitter.
Mm.
All right. Well, apparently it's Ron Howard's voice very often.
Well, I was thinking Morgan Freeman, but
that's a better. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they're getting their narrators, but it's clearly some American cultural touchstone that I missed because I didn't turn on a TV at the right time.
Yeah, I suppose.
Or a movie. Anyway,
so there's that, and I'll leave you with that and whatever else you want to talk about today. But this is Greg Dworkin rounding up post-Super Bowl news, whether we're allowed to say that or not. I can't remember. I think those are previous year's issues. But in any case, take care. Have a good Monday. And I'll be back on Wednesday, and we'll do it again.
All right. Thanks very much. Good start today. Yeah, I don't know what we're allowed to say. I always see on elsewhere, I guess, where they're really broadcasting as opposed to pretending they're broadcasting like we are and using the internet to stream. I imagine the rules are similar. Who knows? I mean, FCC, etc. I don't know. And it's not even that. It's some sort of trademark issue. But you see that all the time. People want to advertise, come buy XYZ product, which pairs very well with, as they often have to say on television and on the radio, the big game. Which I really have no idea why the NFL hasn't copyrighted the big game. But just like with the NCAA basketball, right? You're not allowed to. I think you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say March Madness. You can't refer to the name of the sporting event, which I always thought was very odd because, marketing, ordinarily you want people, without having to compensate them, promoting the name of your product or event. But I really have never understood the motivation behind making people say stuff like that. And sometimes it's peripheral stuff, and sometimes you don't want to cheapen the brand by having every mattress warehouse be able to say that you can buy the best bed for the Super Bowl or whatever. But it's really become absurd. Even when you're giving away tickets to the game as a prize on a radio station, people have to say you can win tickets to the big game, or if you need to buy Doritos for the big game. And that's become the acceptable, I don't know, is it the workaround? I mean, I'm used to saying euphemism, but it's not really a euphemism, but the workaround for the trademark law. I've never really understood that. Armando, please call in and explain why people won't say the Super Bowl and who's going to sue them if they do, so that I understand who's going to sue me. As I'm going to sit here and say, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, March Madness, sue me. I got nothing for you. You're not going to make much money suing me. All right, let's see. What other fun stories have we seen crop up during the morning? I'll check back on our pocket list. The morning's gleanings, I guess. Oh, Armando wants to know. I want to talk about what? Are you trying to catch up? I want to know why I'm not supposed to say Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, March Madness, March Madness, March Madness. What is it that people are afraid of when they advertise things or they speak on the air, even when they're giving away tickets to the Super Bowl as a prize, that makes them say the big game rather than this? I imagine it's just, I mean, it's a copyright or a trademark thing, but it's weird that you can't even mention the name of a major event for fear of being sued. And I don't know who's been sued by all of that. And why do they feel like that's dilution of the mark? Oh, okay, I'm actually going to get an answer. Terrific. Okay, hey Armando, how you doing? Or are you just using this as an excuse to get on the air? Are you there? Oh, well, let's see. He hasn't answered the call, so I guess we must have missed him. Or maybe he was just kidding and just wanted us to hear the fantastic music. You can give it another try if you've got a real answer, though. Let's see. Where were we? Oh, yes, I was going to comb through Pocket to try and see if I could find the morning's gleanings, as I said. Oh, and I've got a message here. I'll just check in on this one. I guess another suggestion of a movie for this morning. Oh, okay. Is that the Will Smith thing? I got you. Oh, one more try with Armando here. Good morning, Armando. Are you there? All right.
Hey, Dave.
I can hear you.
Sorry. I hung up before because, excuse me, I'm in the car and I
okay.
on the speakerphone and I sound bad enough as is. I would have sounded in a wet tone if I hadn't changed
All right.
headset.
No problem.
Anyway, to answer your question,
yes.
Super Bowl is a registered trademark of the National Football League, just like the rings and the Olympics are trademark of the International Olympic Committee, just as March Madness is owned by the NCAA.
Sure.
You could actually say the words. You can't use them in a commercial for a commercial purpose.
I see.
So you are safe because you are technically delivering news.
Ah.
There's no prohibition on using it for news purposes. It's let's say what's the thing? You can't advertise a big Super Bowl party.
I see.
That you're charging admission for.
Okay. I get it. That makes a certain amount of sense. If anyone would like to buy the Super Bowl from me, that would be prohibited. I guess. Okay. Or if I were
yes, but
okay.
even further, and they're pretty ridiculous about it. The Olympics is the most ridiculous.
Really?
You know, they go after people who name their. Let's say you have a store on Olympic Avenue in some town, and you decide I'm going to be the Olympic widget store. They'll sue you for that.
That sounds like a fun bunch of people.
Yeah, McDonald's is like that too. McDonald's is ridiculous. I'm actually involved in a dispute with McDonald's.
I think they just cut you off. See, they are ridiculous. They teamed up with the people who are running the conference calls for the CMS, apparently. I guess we must have lost you there. You're driving through a tunnel, probably. I don't know. Or somewhere where there's bad reception. We could play some sound effects of your driving that will make me. I wonder if you're still going on too. I'm sorry that we aren't able to maintain the connection though. And, let's see what other more ideas for stories. I guess coming through from Greg here. Where are you sending them to me, Greg? On the. Okay. All right, here we are. Let's see. Anyway, let's do our morning roundup. Here's something that caught my eye early this morning as we have to shift directions. Oh, he's come out of the tunnel, Armando has. Hey, okay. Did you drive into a tunnel there?
That. I don't know if you could hear me. I couldn't hear you.
No, you began to tell me about McDonald's being ridiculous. And then...
yeah, because... Well, to finish the McDonald's story, then ask you
sure.
If you want to talk about Mueller.
Oh, yeah,
if he
always.
wants to trademark his name. But
he should.
But I wanted, actually, I think it's worthwhile to explore what Mueller might be up to. I know we're a few minutes away from the break, but to finish with McDonald's, they say they have the exclusive right to use MC in any field that they may offer products. And now, as far as I know, McDonald's entire business is fast food. I mean, I don't know what else they do. I mean, what else would you buy?
They think they're a real estate company, but okay.
No, but I mean, it's ridiculous. Without naming names, my client is in the vitamins business, and they created a Mac Vitamins type product.
Oh, I see.
And McDonald's says that's us because we're so into healthy food thing, you know.
Yeah, there's a high likelihood of confusion between a Big Mac and these vitamins.
Apparently,
I see.
So
I get their point.
They're ridiculous. You know, mostly they just muscle you with their dollars, and they'll litigate you to death. And lots of people just say, "Oh, to hell with it. I'll think of something else."
Well, I could see where they are.
And that's pretty.
Yeah, with the Mick thing, naming everything, McGriddles, McNuggets, etc.
Yeah,
that
but
seems
it's
to be
all
the
related to their food products.
Right. I mean, I suppose there's very little chance that they would be in, say, McLead paint or whatever.
I mean,
who knows?
I think there's very little chance they'll be in the vitamin business either.
True.
Well.
Yes. Right. I don't want to.
And you're not going to judge my case, but
right.
That's
far
what
as I know.
My argument is. You've been in business for 70 years. You've never produced one single vitamin. What's the chances you're going to do it now?
All right. Not even accidentally or as a byproduct of your food has there been a vitamin involved.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump may take big vitamins from McDonald's, but I can't think of anybody else.
Flintstones vitamins, I think, is basically where he's at.
The fish, 2 fish sandwiches, what does he have? 2 fish sandwiches, 2 Big Macs.
Does he? Is that his menu? The fish sandwich.
Well, that's what I think Lewandowski's book. I mean, I didn't read the book, but
does he detail his menu?
That his daily lunch was 2 Big Macs and 2 fish sandwiches.
Wow.
And a big fry and a big Coca-Cola.
Yeah, bigly diet almost certainly. Yeah, 239 pounds, looking
239
like
pounds.
a distant memory.
We both thought the same thing. Yeah, that's how you get to be a svelte 6'3", 239.
Yeah. All right. Well, no one believes that. And oh, by the way, I was looking it up just to see how tall is how tall is Nick Foles, the quarterback of the Eagles. I assume he shows up at the White House. Not all of them are boycotting. He is 6'6", so it's going to be a little bit difficult to test against it. But 6'6" versus 6'3", they should be relatively close in height. But I have a feeling he's going to be dwarfed by Nick Foles. I don't know whether he'll try and. I wonder if he'll put himself on a like one step up. They'll put some press risers out there. And
keep him behind the podium.
Yeah. Put a little milk crate behind the podium there and boost his height. Everyone's forgotten that he says he's now 6'3".
It's not clear who all from the Eagles is going, but Nick Foles should be one. As Ann Coulter celebrated that finally, after 52 Super Bowls, a Christian quarterback finally won.
I know. They've all been Muslim and Jewish. It's huge for school kids in the Jewish day schools. All of them want to be NFL quarterbacks, and it happens over and over. But finally, a Christian has broken through.
The top quarterback in next year's draft happens to be Jewish, a guy named Josh Rosen.
There you go.
Out of UCLA, and he's likely to be the first pick if he's unlucky enough to be picked by the Browns or whoever the Browns trade the pick to. Yeah. The chosen people will be chosen number one probably.
Well, that's the way to get chosen, if you ask me. I don't see any point in waiting around. We are, in fact, coming up on the break. We got about 30 seconds till we go out on that.
I'd like to talk Mueller on the other side, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, nobody minds. That's what everybody's talking about. So we'll hang on for a quick break, just a minute, up at the top of the hour, and we'll catch up on all of these things. I'll see what other items we have related to Mueller by way of a segue. But yeah, big weekend for the memo and all the fallout from it. We'll be right back after this 1 minute break. Thanks, Armando. Hang on just a second. All right, just wanted to hang on for a second while we can welcome ourselves back. Hi, welcome everybody back from our commercial break, as it were, with the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'd like to have a few seconds of musical clearance on one side or the other for editing purposes. Armando's still with us, though driving in the car, and I imagine it's perfectly safe for him to be doing so. So that's good. How are the weather conditions where you're driving?
I'm definitely in line.
Okay.
That ever gets
all right
commercially verified.
All right.
Yeah, and with your indulgence, I'm going to talk a little bit about and talk with you about what Mueller is up to and what impact, if any, and I say none, this Nunes memo has.
We appear to have lost you for just a moment. I hope it's just a moment. One of the great difficulties of mobile connection for who thought it was a great idea to have mobile for live radio? Well, I thought it was a good idea at the time. Let's see. So hopefully we're not gone for too long.
Justice Department is
ringing back in and out.
Considering pardon?
You're sort of fading in and out. Actually, we missed what I would characterize as your entire introduction.
All right. Well, what I was talking about was the potential impact, if any, on
yes
Mueller by the Nunes memo, which I'll explain why I think it's not.
Yes.
And relatedly, what is Trump going to do about the Democratic response memo, which
right. That he would be shameless enough to hide it.
Based on his tweet this morning, I would say there's at least a 50-50 chance he doesn't release it, brazenly claiming that it would, release sensitive, classified information.
Yeah.
But the real problem for Republicans. Can you not hear me?
I got you back now. Just as soon as you recap the part we We understood. It went dead again. But okay, you're still there. Go on.
Well, let me just go to Mueller and cut out the preface. Mueller's not impacted by this brouhaha.
Okay.
Remember, Mueller's just doing his work. He's got 20 attorneys, 20 prosecutors, and who knows how much staff working on this stuff every day, all day.
All right.
And despite the craziest wings of the Republican Party saying Mueller should resign or whatever awful things they say about Mueller, there's nothing in that memo about Mueller, and even Trey Gowdy had to say that.
Yes.
So he moves. He's working. What is he doing? He's doing a few things in my speculative mind. He's really working hard on this obstruction of justice issue, and that's what we see most of, because the people who are being interviewed by him talk about it. I don't think it's Mueller talking about it. I think it's the people who go to the interview and go do it. And, of course, one of the big talking points last week that's been lost is Mark Corallo's interview with Mueller about the concocted story on the Trump Tower meeting with Donald Jr.
Right.
And Hope Hicks has really got some issues if she's already testified, because most likely she lied about that to the FBI.
Well, that's how she does it, I guess.
That's how she does it. So, but I still think, and I think it's the safest political ground, and it goes back to what you and I have been talking about for 2 years. I think Trump's financial crimes are all in the documents. He doesn't need to interview people about it, or not too many people, certainly not people that are in the administration. And I think he's going to get the Trump organization in particular for money laundering and other financial crimes. If you look at what he did with Manafort, and people that was a 20-page comprehensive discussion of all of Manafort's financial crimes, and they did not even use the tax laws yet on him, though there's rumors of a superseding indictment that some people think have been held off because Rick Gates was Manafort's partner, and there's a rumor that he is not only talking with Mueller, but is about to do a plea bargain. I think there might be truth in that, though I'm a little skeptical of the last piece of evidence really supporting that. The last piece of evidence was the withdrawal or requested withdrawal of three of Gates' current attorneys from the case. But you got to realize that Mueller raised with the court a conflict of interest that those three lawyers had with a different case. A friend of Gates, the guy whose brother is basically posted the bond for Gates to get out, those kind of things. And I think that's as much conflict as anything else.
I see.
What else could Mueller be looking at besides the financial crimes aspect of it, which I really think is going to be the heart and soul of this? I think the Trump campaign itself may be a target, and ironically, I think the Nunes memo pretty much helps Mueller's case in this way. Carter Page was described as nobody by the Trump campaign during the campaign, somebody who Trump never met. He wasn't on the payroll. I've never had a conversation with him.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
One of hundreds of coffee boys they apparently employed.
Right. And just like they did with Papadopoulos. And, of course, Papadopoulos, I actually think, was a more serious person in this and was much more attuned into the campaign. I actually could believe that Carter Page wasn't very closely involved in the Trump campaign, though he was on some emails. So there is some nexus. But what's strange is rather than Carter Page from the Trump campaign, the Nunes memo actually puts him at the center of the campaign in that their theory is that the FBI went after the Trump campaign by going after Carter Page.
Right.
In October. And this was a month after he even left his voluntary position, and after many public denials that he had any real connection to the Trump campaign. So this really reverses all of that and seems to argue that that Carter Page was in fact an integral part of the Trump campaign, in which case those things Carter Page did, and we know about a lot of them, are attributable to the organization that is the Trump campaign. Remember, organizations can't be indicted.
Yeah.
So let's say that Mueller doesn't want to take on an issue we discussed last week about whether you can indict the president or not.
Okay.
What if you don't indict the president, but indict instead the president's political campaign, which still exists? The corporate entity still exists.
Oh, yeah, it's already raising money.
It raises funds. It's raising money. So what if he did that? And what if he said, you had Papadopoulos and Sam Clovis, who apparently was a sponsor of all these people. I don't know if you remember who Sam Clovis was.
Yeah.
He actually was a big shot in the campaign early on. He wasn't the campaign manager, but he was sort of the campaign chairman, really. I forget what his title was exactly, but this is when they had, as Trump himself said, 7 people.
Yeah, he was doing all the hiring.
Campaign. He did all the hiring. He got the reason Carter Page and George Papadopoulos were on the foreign policy team was Sam Clovis.
Yeah, he said, "Give me a list. I need a foreign policy team," and Sam Clovis was the guy he has to put it together.
Right. So, what I think is a very viable possibility is that Mueller indicts the Trump campaign, and they can indict them in two different ways: actively colluding with a foreign power, which is a conspiracy claim. But conspiracy to do what? And the answer is, in my view, conspiracy to violate federal campaign finance laws.
Okay.
So what's the nexus of that? I think it's this, and here Donald Jr. plays a part, and that is they solicited and accepted knowingly material assistance to their campaign from a foreign government. Now, that's not treason, strictly speaking, as a legal matter, but it is a criminal violation of the federal campaign finance laws, which prohibit accepting donations or material considerations from foreign persons.
Foreign nationals, let alone the government.
Right, but foreign nationals and a foreign government. So, let's say, what is the significance of that type of indictment? To me, it is twofold, and I think the campaign entity, of course, isn't going to jail, but it's going to be shut down, and frankly, I would think that the money raised might be forfeit. It becomes an interesting question. Now, who was the chief executive officer or the principal of that corporation? It was Donald J. Trump. Could he be charged personally under that? I don't think he'd go there. Well, I really think he's going to avoid the constitutional fight as to whether he can indict him. I think he will use the powers. This is me talking, and this may be improper, but I can see Mueller doing it, making the political point that there was collusion. Because that would be the essence of that indictment, David.
Yeah.
The indictment would say that you conspired to violate the federal campaign finance laws, which prohibit you accepting material assistance and considerations from a foreign national or foreign government. So the essence of that claim is that you colluded.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I guess we could finally land on that. And it seems like the case is pretty well laid out, and Donald Trump Jr. has done as much to lay it out for us as anybody.
Well, that's where the Trump Tower meeting becomes critical. Now, people forget something else about that meeting, at least as reported. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to forget because so much happens. But Donald Trump Jr., when being interviewed by, I believe, the Senate Intelligence Committee, invoked, or perhaps it was the House, because Schiff is the guy who pointed this out, that he invoked attorney-client privilege for his conversations with his father.
Oh.
Do you recall that story?
Yeah, I do, and it didn't make sense then, and I guess it's so now with the passage of time it makes less, but okay.
Well, I think the argument was that, and I'm speculating here, it was either Michael Cohen, not the Boston Globe Michael Cohen, the lawyer guy who worked for the Trump organization and who paid off Stormy Daniels.
Right.
Which, by the way, I had said I would rather Mueller not be a part of that investigation, that they made different special counsel. But in a way, I think it's inescapable, if my theory is true, that he's now investigating as a target the Trump campaign itself. Because then, frankly, if he's investigating the Trump campaign, that should fall into his bailiwick.
If they paid, you mean if they paid Stormy Daniels with campaign funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because that also would be potentially a criminal campaign finance violation. Remember, the John Edwards case alleged two things. The essence of it was that the money that was given to Rael Hunter by Bunny Mellon and I forget the other person's name, but these were big campaign contributors to John Edwards at the time, that money was really a hidden campaign contribution to John Edwards for the purpose of covering up and shielding from public scrutiny his personal relationship with Rael Hunter, which, frankly, that's on all fours with the Stormy Daniels situation if she was paid $130,000 for a non-disclosure, because that's the express purpose, to keep it shielded. The question becomes, were the Trump people stupid enough, and frankly I think it's very possible that they were, to actually have transferred funds from the campaign to that LLC that Cohen formed, to pay her. Trump is a cheap bastard who really isn't that rich, and he's already spent $50 million on his campaign at that point.
Yeah.
So I think it's really possible that they did do it that badly. Remember, that's the kind of thing that, Michael Cohen was fixing it because it was a closely held fact. I don't think that's something they were talking over with even, God forbid, Kellyanne Conway or anybody, or Sean Spicer, whoever else they had at the time, who was theoretically the professional political operatives.
Yeah.
I think that was something that was done between Trump and Michael Cohen, maybe, and maybe two or three other people at the most. Who the bodyguard guy would probably have known too, whatever his name is.
Oh yes, right. But I can't recall. Keith something or other, but
Keith something. And because they kept it, there was no one that would say, "Are you crazy? Don't do that. If you're going to pay her, just pay her out of your own funds." But even that, obviously, they would have. This is a John Edwards problem. Now, John Edwards was not convicted. The jury acquitted, and there were some hung charges. But it wasn't that the theory that if you take campaign contributions to pay somebody off to keep it quiet, that's not a crime. Apparently, the judge let it go to the jury. The jury, you have a conviction, a criminal conviction. So, as I said, I was just, for the tawdriness of it, I was hoping that it wasn't something Mueller was involved in. I'm not sure he can escape it if he's actually doing as I speculate, which is investigating the Trump campaign as an entity and a target of the criminal investigation.
Well, I'd be for that. I'd be interested in finding that out. And they seem to have made it so. Well, I was going to say it's not open really, but they made it so obvious in the end that it would make for an interesting avenue of inquiry. That's for sure. And once again, here the situation would be the payment of money, not necessarily how he conducts himself personally. Besides which, this was in 2006 anyway, but the payment was in 2016, so. That makes it important.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he had apparently an affair just after his wife having had their son Barron is tawdry and unseemly, but it's not illegal. I mean, that can't be
not in Lake Tahoe, anyway.
Right, so not Lake Tahoe. But
Oh, I'm losing you again here. Oh, and you're back. Okay, yeah, well, it certainly... It could be, and well, that's an exciting development in a way that this would end up being a part of... that makes it salacious enough to stay in the news. That's always good.
But, well, that's true, and if it was part of the indictment, of course, it would be something else. I feel comfortable that Mueller would not go down the Starr route and make descriptions of the sexual acts. I think he would stick to
it's the money that's the problem.
The money issues, if he went that way. Now, the other things that Mueller seems to be about is really tied to whatever Flynn might be telling him and whatever Papadopoulos might have told them. That is... Well, Flynn, of course, was very close to Trump during that campaign. He was traveled with him all the time.
Yes.
How much of what Flynn knew and did was Trump a party to, and what exactly is the deal? Now, what do we have as a data point on Flynn? We have an important one, it seems to me, that the sentencing hearing for Flynn, which was scheduled, believe it or not, for last week, was postponed for 3 months because they weren't ready to put forward apparently a recommendation. They used cryptic language, but the surmise of most prosecutors were that Flynn's cooperation is still ongoing, and they're waiting to see how much he cooperates to see how far down they'll go on his potential sentence. So there is whatever Flynn knows, and we don't know that much about what Flynn knows about what Trump knew. There was a reason why Trump was asking Comey to take it easy on Flynn.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure there was some reason. But we can't hear it. Well,
No, I'm skeptical that Don Jr. did more than run around trying to impress Daddy with the stupid stuff. I don't know that Trump has much confidence in him or shared much with him, but who knows? Anything's possible. But Flynn is certainly someone who could be the key to getting at what Trump did and knew. So the last pieces are the family. It seems to me that Trump is looking at, and this goes back to the financial crimes issues. Jared Kushner, I believe, runs a business that is fairly similar at this point to what the Trump organization did on, and that's a company that's overstretched and has no cash. They have a big balloon payment due for the 666 building on Fifth Avenue. They have a disgruntled fellow investor partner in the limited liability company who is maneuvering for either advantage or to get Jared out. I'm not sure which, but Jared has a personal guarantee.
Mm-hmm. Well,
different countries, China, all the while giving, frankly, apparently government favors to them in the hopes of getting them to give him money. He's very vulnerable, it seems to me, not just on the relatively smaller technical things like disclosing all his financials on his security clearance issues.
Right, I forgot about that.
And if they want to prosecute him, they have him. We didn't know that.
Well, that's true. That's always an entree point. For
what happened with Jared?
Yeah. Well, that'll become a big question. Our connection is getting, I think, increasingly unreliable, unfortunately.
All right, I'm going to hang up then and let you go. I apologize for the bad connection.
Hey, we try. It was good to catch up with you and to think about these things. We got a lot to talk about this week. We'll be on this topic forever. I mean, until this is all over, I'm sure.
That's correct. Mueller will tell us when it's over.
All right. Well, thanks very much for bringing us up to date. We'll talk again, I'm sure, this week about this and other topics. Let's see. I have a whole, entire collection of articles about that we can draw some additional lessons from with respect to the memos, the Nunes nonsense, I guess, as you might refer to it. Plus, of course, speculation about where the Russia probe is going. There was at least some speculation leading into the weekend. Here I have a piece in Politico by Darren Samuelson about the possibility of a direct indictment of Trump as opposed to the other alternative theory here advanced by Armando, that an indictment of the Trump campaign, or perhaps at some point the Trump organization as well. But I guess we want to throw this one out there in terms of opening up the possibility of a debate about the question over whether or not a sitting president can be directly indicted. And we told you that there was room for speculation on it, though it is very often portrayed, at least in the press, that has to give a kind of a quick glossing over of the issues, that it's a settled issue that sitting presidents can't be indicted. They have avoided, to this point, indicting sitting presidents and attempt to try and settle whatever outstanding legal issues there are by working around it. But that doesn't actually answer the question. This piece, Russia probe lawyers think Mueller could indict Trump, says as much. As I said, Darren Samuelson in Politico. We're bumping up against our break, but let's get a quick flavor for what's going on here. Many legal scholars doubt a U.S. v. Trump case is possible, but two attorneys who have dealt with special counsel Robert Mueller's team disagree, and one of them expects Mueller to move as early as this spring, which is a time frame, a timeline that Armando has thrown out there before. And that is among the more likely if you believe that Mueller will do what he can to avoid interfering with the campaigns. And it's all, all indications are that he's by the book enough that he might want to try and avoid that. Special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation has gathered enough steam that some lawyers representing key Donald Trump associates are considering the possibility of a historic first, an indictment against the sitting president. While many legal experts contend that Mueller lacks the standing to bring criminal charges against Trump, at least two attorneys working with clients swept up in the Russia probe told Politico they consider it a possibility that Mueller could indict the president for obstruction of justice. Neither attorney claimed to have specific knowledge of Mueller's plans. Both based their opinions on their understanding of the law. One also cited his interactions with the special counsel's team, whose interviews have recently examined whether Trump tried to derail the probe into his campaign's Russia tries. If I were a betting man, I'd bet against the president, said one of these lawyers. The second attorney, who represents a senior Trump official, speculated that Mueller could try to bring an indictment against Trump even if he expects the move to draw fierce procedural challenges from the president's lawyers, if only, this is an interesting point, if only to demonstrate the gravity of his findings. It may very well be the case that he knows that this Congress is unlikely, for purely political reasons, purely partisan political reasons, to bring an impeachment case or even broach the subject while Trump is president and while he is a member of the Republican Party, of course. And so this may be a way of putting pressure on the public and elected institutions that are supposed to hold the president accountable, and for which there would be much fewer questions. There would be many fewer questions, I guess, about whether or not they had this authority. It would be indisputable. Whether he has the authority, there's some questions, so he may want to put pressure on them. We'll talk more about it after a break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, when we last left before our break that we're just coming out of here, we were reading Politico's speculation based on the interviews with some of the lawyers involved in the case that there might, in fact, eventually be an indictment of Donald Trump. I guess it's getting to the point where there are people who are saying, as quoted in the article, if I were a betting man, I'd bet against the president. That is to say, bet in favor of there being an indictment. And an interesting point made just before the break, that whether or not there either objectively really is the power for a special counsel to indict a sitting president, or whether it is merely speculative, or whether it's just one of those congressional or constitutional rather gray areas that's never really been fully fleshed out, and whether or not Mueller actually thinks it's an area that would break in his favor, that he could actually win on the question of do I have standing to indict the president, might still be willing to move to bring such an indictment, if only for the reason that it would underscore for the other players in this political drama, to the extent that it's political and not just criminal and legal, how important this case really is. I was willing to test the theory, much touted theory that you can't indict a president. I think we ought to test the limits of that, just to focus the collective American mind on just how bad these things that Donald Trump has been involved with actually are. I don't know whether that's really the kind of gamble he takes in the end, but it's an interesting thought and well worth considering. And I like the thinking. The only way to focus the mind on it, since Republicans in Congress would be almost certain to bury it if it were left entirely up to them, it might somehow change the context. If they had any conscience, and I don't think that they do, and that's an additional problem. But a Congress that would otherwise simply be willing to perhaps try and sweep things under the rug and say, we're not going to impeach a Republican president as a majority Republican Congress. It's one thing if the question is just referred to them, what do you think we ought to do? It's another thing, perhaps, if the question is referred to them as a last resort. Look, I developed a case which, if it were any other defendant other than the one person we've elected, allegedly, President of the United States, I would not only indict them, I'd be able to criminally convict them and put them away. But, okay, fine, the courts rule, for whatever reason, and I think they're wrong, but they have ruled, let's say, in this hypothetical, that a sitting president cannot be indicted. Then there's only one remedy. Then there's only one thing you can do, unless you're willing to simply say if the president does it, then it's not illegal, that a president is above the law, that a president can do anything without constraint by the law. If you're a believer in that, I don't know what I can tell you. I suppose you're just a full-blown authoritarian, and given your political bents, actually also a Nazi as well. But if you believe that the president can be held accountable, then we've narrowed our options. There's only one body that can hold him accountable. It's the Congress. And over to you, boys. Are you going to let it slide? Are you really going to carry that much water for this president? You're going to say, we're going to allow criminal activity by the president of the United States and do nothing about it, leading into the midterm elections. Well, you know, I don't want to throw it open as a possibility, because there will be people who swallow it in large numbers and return, you know, still probably send 200 Republicans back to Congress even after this happens. I mean, even if the Democrats take over the majority, there'll still be, you know, 200 or maybe more members of the Republican Party return to Congress despite having been handed this basket by the Mueller investigation. Look, I have proven a serious crime here. I moved to indict him. I wanted to take this problem off your hands. You fought back. You insisted that it was impossible, that a sitting president couldn't be indicted. The courts went your way, and now the Constitution leaves us only one option, and you ran away from it. And we're going to vote in 6 months. That's not the worst stance to go into the elections with. I mean, I wouldn't want it to happen that way. I'd prefer in this case to simply say, yeah, we can indict this guy. And, you know, there's a lot of arguments to be made in favor of it, not just legalistic arguments and constitutional arguments, but to the extent that we have ever believed that a president couldn't be indicted because he was too busy and he needed to have his mind focused elsewhere, that's probably less applicable for this president than any other. It's probably best, the fewer places his mind is focused, the better. And I'm not sure he's capable of focusing his mind on anything in particular with or without an indictment. So I'm not sure that that excuse means very much. I wouldn't mind having that argument in public either. Anyway, just to get a little bit more, glean a little more from this Politico piece, we'll continue reading it. After throwing out this possibility, it begins with a quote from one of the attorneys. It's entirely possible Mueller goes that route on the theory that as an open question, it should be for the courts to decide. Even if the indictment is dismissed, it puts maximum pressure on Congress to treat this with the independence and intellectual honesty that it will never, ever get. Knowing that it won't get that kind of intellectual honesty, at least you frame the consequences of refusing to give it intellectual honesty and independence before you toss them the ball. The lawyers' assessments hardly resolve the public debate about whether a federal prosecutor can indict a sitting president, one that several attorneys involved in the Russia probe said they are closely tracking through online op-eds and Twitter dust-ups. It's so much fun, said one. I'm sure it is. Several legal scholars say an effort by Mueller to initiate a case titled U.S. v. Trump would, at a minimum, likely move quickly to the Supreme Court. There is no legal precedent for an indictment of a president, only a pair of Justice Department legal opinions from 1973, you know what was happening then, and 2000, and we know what had just happened, saying it is not a viable option. And that's interesting. Let's read about that background. The 2000 opinion concluded that the indictment or criminal prosecution of a sitting president would unconstitutionally undermine the capacity of the executive branch to perform its constitutionally assigned functions. And that is a serious problem and a serious argument. It's just not very applicable to this particular administration, which, one, has no capacity, and two, doesn't perform its constitutionally assigned functions even in the absence of an indictment. And I would be more than happy to have that argument. I don't know how it comes out. The courts are likely to say, well, you're supposed to be. And in the case you ever have pangs of conscience about becoming more conscientious about performing your job, we wouldn't want an indictment to stand in the way. But I wouldn't mind spending 2 or 3 days in the public eye explaining, look, they haven't nominated anyone to these jobs. The jobs which are filled by hangers-on and sycophants who have no knowledge whatsoever of even the issue area in which they're working. And I mean, we have a pile this high, and I'm indicating how high it is with my hands because this is on the radio, of people who have been either dismissed from their jobs or not yet dismissed but are exposed as completely incompetent to their jobs, and the list keeps growing every day. There's another one on my list right now. We probably won't even get to that story, but it will remain in pocket, and we'll bring it up in the coming days. Anyway, so let's see. That's the word on a 2000 opinion. That memo, by the way, written by an assistant attorney general nearly 2 years after the House impeached, of course, President Bill Clinton for lying under oath and obstructing justice. That sounds familiar. About his affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. Independent counsel Kenneth Starr never tried to indict Clinton, but Starr, who filed a damning report to Congress in 1998, considered the option and even tasked his lawyers with preparing draft indictments, as well as a legal opinion asserting his power to charge Clinton. And I guess some of that excerpted here. It is proper, constitutional, and legal for a federal grand jury to indict a sitting president for serious criminal acts that are not part of and contrary to the president's official duties. Starr's legal advisor, Ronald Rotunda, and remember we've heard that name in connection with this case of late, I think, concluded in a 1998 memo first made public last summer through an open records request by the New York Times. In this country, no one, even President, then Clinton, is above the law, the memo said. Sounds familiar. Despite that assertion, Rotunda said in an interview that Mueller cannot indict Trump, and this is interesting, because he has a different legal standing than Starr enjoyed. Starr's powers were defined by an independent counsel statute that expired in 1999. Rotunda said Mueller, by contrast, effectively has the powers of a U.S. attorney and must follow all DOJ rules, regulations, procedures, practices, and policies. That would mean Mueller is bound by the Clinton Justice Department's 2000 memo, he said, as well as another Justice Department opinion written in 1973. If we know anything about Mueller, we think we know that he follows the rules, all of them. Paul Rosenzweig, remember him? We spoke about him last week, having written a piece for one of the papers that we read. Another former Starr deputy, by the way, Rosenzweig, wrote, Tuesday in the Atlantic. That must have been the piece we referred to. Mueller will not indict Trump for obstruction of justice or for any crime, period, full stop, end of story. Speculations to the contrary are just fantasy. On the other hand, speculations about indicting the Trump campaign, not here addressed. So Armando's point still stands there. The 1973 Justice Department memo was used to shield, of course, President Richard Nixon from a possible indictment by Watergate prosecutors who believed they had the power to bring one. That debate was unresolved after the special prosecutor decided to share his work with the House Judiciary Committee, which was preparing to launch an impeachment investigations against Nixon. The Justice Department regulations that govern Mueller's work offer no clear endgame for the public to follow his investigation. They do stipulate that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, if we have our pronunciation correct, I think, has oversight of and final say on all major decisions by Mueller, specifically including any indictments. Rosenstein is also required to submit a report to Congress on the grounds for closing the investigation. Mueller's office and the Justice Department both declined comment, as did attorneys for Trump and the White House. In December, in an interview with Axios, Trump's personal lawyer, John Dowd, argued that the president cannot obstruct justice because he is the chief law enforcement officer under the Constitution. I have my doubts about that theory. Some Republicans warn that Mueller would be playing with fire should he pursue an indictment of Trump. It would create a constitutional crisis. Oh, well, we haven't had one of those yet today. Said Republican Representative Ken Buck of Colorado, a former federal prosecutor and district attorney. Buck said Mueller would be on especially dangerous ground were he to base an obstruction of justice case on Trump's firing of James Comey. Assessing the motives of a president who decides to dismiss executive branch personnel would be unique in the history of the country, he said. Of course, we wouldn't have to do that much assessment of the motives. He admitted what they were to Lester Holt on national television, so I don't know how well that holds up. Signs that Mueller is closing in on Trump have been growing for months. Mueller has indicted former Trump campaign aides Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. Both have pleaded not guilty and obtained guilty pleas from former National Security Advisor, the notorious spy Michael Flynn, and former campaign advisor George Papadopoulos for lying to the FBI. Witnesses and attorneys who have been interviewed by the special counsel's team say the special counsel is focusing on a potential obstruction of justice case based on several well-documented events, including Trump's firing of Comey, his efforts to prevent Jeff Sessions' recusal, and others. The lawyer who said he would bet against Trump, remember him? He said he thinks Mueller could wrap up his case soon, potentially with an indictment, to avoid acting too close to this fall's midterm elections. If he's going to do it, I think he'll do it in the spring, the attorney said. I don't think he wants to be accused of trying to influence the election that dramatically. On Capitol Hill, several Democrats said they believe Mueller has the authority to file charges against Trump, but questioned whether he actually would. I think it's far more likely if the special counsel finds evidence of criminality that it's presented in a report to Congress. That was Adam Schiff speaking. Schiff said Mueller would likely have steep reservations about the notion that 12 jurors in some part of the country should decide the fate of the republic. Well, I don't know how good that sounds, but okay. In addition, Schiff said a federal judge might stay any criminal proceedings until after Trump's presidency. That was mentioned as a possibility, in Armando's thinking last week as well. That was the assumption of the Nixon-era Justice Department memo, which suggested such an outcome could be disastrous. Given the realities of modern politics and mass media, and the delicacy of the political relationships which surround the presidency, both foreign and domestic, there would be a Russian roulette. I bet they didn't realize how funny that was going to sound later. A Russian roulette aspect of the course of indicting the president but postponing trial, hoping in the meantime that the power to govern could survive, wrote Robert G. Dixon, Jr., then an assistant attorney general and head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel. Rosenstein could also deny any attempt by Mueller to indict Trump. Justice Department rules would require such a denial to be transmitted to the House and the Senate Judiciary Committee leaders at the conclusion of Mueller's work. That scenario would allow everybody involved, Mueller, Rosenstein, etc., to play the thing strictly by the book and still get Mueller's conclusion, if there is one, that the president committed a crime, into the hands of the only people to whom it really matters, which is Congress, said Frank Bowman, former Justice Department trial attorney and University of Missouri law professor. Philip Allen Lacovara, who served as a top counsel to the two Watergate special prosecutors, said he believes Mueller could seek an indictment against Trump, but only if the facts suggest a slam dunk against the president. He dismissed the Clinton Justice Department's memo's contention that an indictment would interfere with the president's official duties. Oh, yeah? Okay. When an incumbent president, whether it's Bush or Obama or Trump, spends an enormous amount of time on the golf course, it's a little bit fanciful to say that the president can't be called to account for alleged criminality because he's got to be available 24 hours a day to be president, he said. Not far removed from what I was saying. I go even a little further, but okay. One of the Russia defense attorneys also suggested what he called a jujitsu move, naming Trump as unindicted co-conspirator in a larger obstruction of justice case that targets one or more associates, or perhaps, as Armando suggested, the campaign. Whatever Mueller and his deputies have planned, the attorney said, it is not likely to be anticlimactic. There's a sense of confidence I feel when I'm with them, said the same lawyer. Their level of confidence has grown, and that's a body language thing. We're reduced to body language on this. Anyway, I think lots of good stuff to think about in terms of exactly what form an indictment or otherwise could take and why. So good background information to have and hold on to over the next couple of weeks as we figure out what the hell is likely to go on here. Well, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, a couple of comments here. The Warlock chiming in says, by the way, a sitting president cannot be indicted. Well, that explains the golf cart. That does explain why he's very rarely doing his own, walking under his own power. Loves to sit in the golf cart. You can't indict me because I'm sitting. And he probably believes that. Remember, again, I still have yet I should really search around a little bit more, but I'm still remain convinced that the president's interest in having parts of his theoretical, hypothetical wall be actually see-through, as he likes to say. It comes from people questioning him about the issue of transparency, and him thinking, oh, you mean you want the wall to be transparent? And then he had to come up with reasons why. I mean, the idea that you would be hit in the head with a flying drug package seems rather outlandish to me. But okay, whatever. But yeah, I think he really just misunderstood the usage of the word transparent, and I think he might even literally be dumb enough to misunderstand the meaning of the word sitting president. Really, a couple other comments to catch up with. Rebecca Romans, by the way, explaining the Ron Howard thing. Ron Howard as the narrator voice because he was the narrator of Arrested Development, a show which I have been prevailed upon by many to watch but have never gotten around to. But it explains my ignorance of the fact. And Michael Musson, way back at the beginning of the show when I was complaining about the president having landed nearby but not on his golf course out here in Virginia, he speculates that they don't land at Trump's golf course because the landing fees they charge there are too high. Be another emolument for him to pocket. Okay. Let's see. With the remaining time of the show, there's a lot of stuff we can add to the roundup, but maybe we'll save a lot of it for Tuesday, and instead skip over to this piece from Lawfare, which I think this is the piece that we were warned last night to have an eye out for, as Benjamin Wittes was excitedly tweeting last night. Everybody keep an eye on Lawfare in the morning. Just saying. He was saying. Kate Sherrill has picked up on this one and sent it along to us. Benjamin Wittes tweeting, I got more than 100 pages of internal FBI correspondence from the week of the Comey firing, and it all shows one thing. The White House was lying. It also tells a fascinating story about the Bureau's reaction. Let's see how much of that we can cram in before we leave. Lots of names on the byline here. Nora Ellingson, Quinta Jurasic, Sabrina McCubbin, Shannon Togawa Mercer, and of course Benjamin Wittes down at the end here. Headline, I hope this is an instance of fake news. FBI messages show the Bureau's real reaction to Trump firing James Comey. Let's check at least a bit of it out. When President Trump fired Comey as FBI director last May, the article begins, the special agent in charge of the Detroit field office, David Gilios, Gelios, wrote an email to his staff. I just saw CNN reporting that Director Comey has been fired by President Trump. I have no notification from HQ of any such thing. If I receive any information from HQ, I will advise. I'd ask all to stand by for clarification of this reporting. I'm only sending this because I want everyone to know that I have received no HQ confirmation of the reporting. I hope this is an instance of fake news. That's how out of the loop it was and how out of the blue the firing was. Members of the FBI and field offices all around the country turning to their directors and saying, I just saw this on CNN. Do you know if it's true? You know what? I'm finding out just like you are. Not a good way to run the FBI. In the Knoxville field office, Special Agent in Charge Renee McDermott wrote to the staff she leads, quote, unexpected news such as this is hard to understand, but I know you all know our director stood for what is right and what is true, with 3 exclamation points. He truly made us better when we needed it the most. The following day, in an email with the subject line, follow up with your squads, she followed up, I need for all of you to make sure our/your folks are doing okay. Check with them today, tomorrow. You get the idea. All of these will, of course, be used as evidence against all these people in dismissing them from the FBI because they're obviously anti-Trump. Because whatever. The following day, in the email with the subject line, follow up with your, I read the follow up with your squads bit. McDermott sent that latter email as the White House was launching its public broadside against Comey's performance. In a May 10th press conference, the same day McDermott was asking her staff to make sure everyone was doing okay, then Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, now Chief Press Secretary, I guess, claimed that the president had, quote, lost confidence in Director Comey, and that, quote, the rank and file of the FBI had lost confidence in their director. Of course, she made that part up, but what are you going to do? She stated that the president had had countless conversations with members from within the FBI. Countless, because there were zero, in the course of making his decision to fire Comey. The following day, Sanders stated that she personally had, quote, heard from countless members of the FBI that are grateful and thank her for the president's decision, unquote. And that the president believed, quote, Director Comey was not up to the task, that he wasn't the right person in the job. Trump wanted somebody that could bring credibility back, of all places, back to the FBI. Trump himself blasted Comey, too, of course, stating in an interview that the former director was a showboat, he's a grandstander, which is amazing coming from Donald Trump, and that the FBI, quote, has been in turmoil. You know that, I know that, everybody knows that. You take a look at the FBI a year ago, it was in virtual turmoil. Less than a year ago. It hasn't recovered from that. A few days later, the New York Times reported that Trump had told Russian officials visiting him in the Oval Office the day of Comey's firing that Comey was, quote, a nut job, which is rather an amazing thing to say to anybody, much less to visiting Russian officials. And P.S., once again, the field office directors of the FBI not given confirmation of the story. The Russians given direct confirmation of the story by the president in the Oval Office with a big smile on his face and laughing and adding in nut job. That's the way we handle business in this country, I guess. And just like Greg was saying, it's just hard for Republicans to believe because, wow, it's like something out of a movie. It's difficult to get my head around. Over the next few days, a wealth of evidence emerged to suggest that Trump and Sanders, that is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, were playing fast and loose with the truth. But we now have the documents to prove that decisively. Their disclosure was not a leak, but an authorized action by the FBI, which released to us, under the Freedom of Information Act, more than 100 pages of leadership communications to staff dealing with the firing. This material tells a dramatic story about the FBI's reaction to the Comey firing, but it is neither a story of gratitude to the president nor a story of an organization in turmoil, relieved by a much-needed leadership transition. Within a few days of the firing, both current and former FBI officials began pushing back against the White House's claims, the obvious lies from Sanders. Then acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, remember him? Testifying before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence said that Comey, quote, enjoyed broad support within the FBI and that the vast majority of employees enjoyed a deep and positive connection to Director Comey. Here at Lawfare, Nora Ellington, who served as a counterterrorism analyst at the FBI for several years, talked with roughly 20 of her former colleagues. She characterized the opinion of Comey among the FBI's rank and file as almost universally positive. Nearly everyone loved him, she wrote, and the degree of consensus on this point has been incredible. She went on to say all of the people I talked to described having the same reaction when they heard that the director had been fired. Complete shock, followed by deep sadness. The president of the FBI Agents Association, Thomas O'Connor, called Comey's firing a gut punch. Resolving the inconsistency between the White House statements and accounts from within the Bureau seemed like a good job for the Freedom of Information Act. When the head of an agency is abruptly fired, managers have to inform their teams, and those messages can speak volumes about the mood at the agency. As Benjamin Wittes wrote at the time, he filed the FOIA requests. After reading Ellingson's piece, a thought occurred to me. This is a factual dispute with a large body of objective evidence behind it. When you decapitate an organization like the FBI, managers have to tell their staffs, after all. They do this, I imagine, by writing an email to their staffs. And that was true. And in an organization in turmoil, one run by a nut job in whom the rank and file have lost confidence, one might expect such an email to have a celebratory flavor, to talk about how the long national nightmare is over, say, or how there's a great opportunity to restore sanity to the organization. On the other hand, when a beloved leader is removed by a president in what is seen as an attack on the institution, one might expect an email with a very different tone. The FBI has lots of managers who will have to have sent those emails to their staffs. And so the balance of the article, which you can read for yourselves, and I recommend that you do, is the result of that inquiry. And guess what? It tends to prove more so than anything else. It tends to prove that the president, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and everybody on their side was in fact lying about the propriety and celebratory mood among FBI agents. Countless words of praise, I'm sure. And, those things could be released too. I guess we'll have to wait a while on those. But, of course, those won't be released because national security, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, time for us to wrap up here and hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Let's give you a flavor of what's coming up on today's show. Longtime GOP strategist Caton Dawson admits there are no circumstances under which this House will ever impeach Trump. I think we all probably guessed that, but why not have it on the record one more time?
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Oh, important breaking news here out of South Bristol, New York. Billionaire Tom Golisano is refusing to pay his $90,000 school tax bill until officials of the town find a way to stop migrating Canadian geese from pooping on his lawn. How about that, those migrants? I knew they were up to something. We'll talk to you tomorrow.